Welcome back, sewists. I have a project today that has been in my to-do pile for months and months, and we're going to get it done. But first, I'm wearing the laundry day top that I made a couple weeks ago. The link to this video will be in the description if you'd like to make it. Let me show you the whole outfit. It's such a pretty top. I really like it, and I love this pattern. Okay, let's look at today's project. You may have heard that there is a Diane von Furstenberg documentary out on Hulu. I don't have Hulu, so I have not seen it yet, but I am super interested. I know about Diane von Furstenberg just because I follow fashion. She is well known for making the wrap dress in the 70s popular, and there are loads of patterns out there. This one is the Vogue that we're making today. They have recently come out with another one that actually has her name on it. It costs more money, but it's almost an identical pattern. And I think Simplicity has one. You'll find multiple versions of this classic 1970s wrap dress. Before I get into the actual project, I'm just going to show you some pictures of first Diane von Furstenberg wearing the iconic dress, and then a few more pictures from the 70s of this dress that was made so popular because it was like easy to wear, comfortable, could wear it to work, could dress it down, could dress it up. It was great for resort wear. As a plus size gal, wrap dresses are a little tricky, especially if you're fuller in the bust line. They tend to, and you'll notice all of the models are very small busted, which is perfect for this type of dress. You don't have to worry about wardrobe malfunction. For myself, I will either have to pin, put a snap, a hook and eye, something in the wrap portion of the bodice. Otherwise, the cleavage issue will be just something I could not wear in public and feel comfortable. So that's always something I'm aware of. I've made another beautiful top that had a wrap front. It was not a true wrap. It wrapped, but it was sewn in. The seam was sewn in. It looked like this. I'll also link this below. And I thought I was going to have to sew it shut. It, however, fit so well that it stayed where it belonged. It was never an issue. It didn't gap. It was great. So we will see how today goes and what I need to do. Let's look at this fabric. This is a creped knit. I was looking for something that kind of looked like the classic vintage ones that when I was looking up the originals from the 70s, and I thought this kind of fit the bill. It is black, nude beige color, and then almost what I would call Pepto-Bismol pink. Now, if you look at the pattern, it has multiple options. It has a collar or no collar. It has a 3/4 sleeve with a flounce or a short sleeve, and it has a sort of A-line full skirt or a straight skirt. I would like to do the 3/4 sleeve and the full skirt. However, I don't know that I have enough fabric. It will get adjusted as I'm laying out and adjusting for my size to see which it is. I normally can wear about an 18 on top, but I need like a 22 in the skirt. However, I am a fuller cup size, so I may be even altering that more and actually going out a little on the side in the front only to give me a little more for the bust line in the front. We're going to work all that out. So that's what I'm going to work on right now, and then I'll come back and talk to you about the changes that I've made. So here's my bodice front, and I cut an 18, but out here on the side you can see it kind of bows out. I went out to a 20 and back in just right here where this full bust is to give me a little extra room. So I have a little bit more in the front only. The back is just straight 18. On the skirts, they started an 18 waist. They slowly work out to a 20 pretty early in the hip, and then finally to a 22 at the fullest tip just to give me plenty of skirt. Now this is a 60-inch wide fabric. However, I need 2 of the skirt front, and you can see the skirt front is wider than the fabric when folded in half, so I have to cut 2, one below the other. So I'll have a strip of fabric down the side after I cut these out, and that is where I will be getting my bodice front. So the fronts will have to be cut differently than when it's folded in half like it is currently. So I have got my tie, my back skirt, my sleeve, my back bodice, the back neckband, and the sleeve band on here. And then I have not yet put on my front neckband actually the front pieces. So all of the back and the ties are cut, and the sleeve will be cut on the fold. Once this is cut, I'm going to open the fabric up and I'll cut the rest. So let me get this cut out and I'll show you how that goes. Fortunately, this fabric is non-directional, so I'm not as worried about if I have to flip my pattern pieces. It's going to look fine. It's going to look the same. Okay, I have opened the fabric out flat. So you can see I have one skirt lined up on the grain line. I have all of this fabric left. So here's my first front and one of the 4 facings that I have to cut out. And I'm also going to get 2 interfacing cut of this, and I'm going to use a knit interfacing because I am using a crepe knit fabric. Normally I put a pocket in everything. I am not going to this time, just because I think the pocket would just pull. It does have a waistline though, which is also making me think maybe I do want a pocket because I could attach it to that waistline or to give it structure. So I haven't 100% decided. I also need to get 2 of this. I'm waiting to cut the front bodices because I want to get both big skirts cut out, and then I'm going to have big pieces left over that I can get the rest of my facings and my fronts. So this, I'm going to get these 2 pieces cut out, readjust the skirt. Because we have to lay these flat, make sure you flip the pattern over to do the other side. So the first time I'm cutting everything face side up. The second time I'm cutting everything with the pattern flipped over or the wrong side up, so that I don't end up with 2 lefts or 2 rights when I'm done, because we're having to cut these flat. I am cutting out my final skirt piece. I flipped it over, lined up my grain line, and so the skirt is getting cut out. I'm cutting out my first of the bodice and the second of my facing. So I'll have to get 2 more facings, and I'll have to flip this over to get 1 more bodice. But I have all of this fabric here on the side to get those few pieces out of, so I know I'm good. If you have to lengthen this at all, buy extra fabric. I am squeaking it out. I am getting enough, but I would add some extra fabric, especially if you have anything directional. It's going to be a lot to get everything lined up. So pay attention to your yardages. It's a little bit in the cutting end. Final pieces being cut out. I have 2 more of the neckband little facing pieces to cut, and I fold it in half so I can cut those together. I flip my pattern back over to get the other bodice front, and I still have a little bit of scrappy scraps left. If I wanted to, I could get a pocket. If I decided to do a pocket, I probably would face it and use a tricot or a super lightweight jersey knit so it wouldn't shadow through on this fabric, but I think I'm going to go without a pocket. I'm probably going to regret that, but that's the choice I'm making at the moment. A quick reminder for pattern piece 4, you need 2 of them. You actually make the neckband twice. One is the facing, one is the outer, and then we're going to need 1 of the interfacing. So make sure, it doesn't say it on the pattern piece here, but you do need to. It says it in the directions. Okay, so I have everything cut out, including the interfacing, and when you look at the directions, step 1 is the interfacing, cutting out the interfacing. What I do, which is not usually how the pattern does it, but I like to prep all my pieces. So I will go ahead and fuse all my interfacing on now, and I will go ahead and put in any pleats or darts that need done. And if there are like drawstrings or ties or anything like that, I go ahead and make those. So in this pattern, I am starting with, the interface, fusing the interfacing on, which I think, okay, so number 1, they have us fuse the interfacing. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and do number 2, which is put in my pleats. I'm going to go ahead and do number 6, which is make my ties. Then I will be ready to start assembling everything. So if you're doing the collar, don't forget to also interface one of your collar pieces. I'm not doing the collar, and the cuff does not have an interfacing. I double checked, I don't interface the cuff. Those are the things that I'm going to work on now. Let's get some stuff done. If you've never used a knit interfacing before, this is what it looks like. This is a fusible. This side has the little glue dots, you can feel them, and this side is nice and smooth. It is like a tricot knit. It comes in different, there's actually different manufacturers and different weights. I have a couple this one's quite sheer and soft, which I really like. It's lovely. And so this is what I'm going to be using. I have a black and a white in this. I've chosen to do white interfacing because there are a lot of light pieces in there and I didn't want the black shadowing through. So this is what we're going to use to interface with. So I'm getting ready to fuse. I've laid down my Teflon or silicone pressing sheet first. I have my, this will be on the inside or the wrong side of the garment. That's the facing side. That's what's down first. Then I've put my interfacing on top of that with the sticky side down, so sticky side towards the wrong side, so that I can press it and just make sure it's nice and flat. If you have any issues with your fashion fabric, press it first before putting the interfacing on. Don't press your interfacing first because it sticks, which is why I use my little Teflon or my Silpat. It's like a Silpat if you bake. It's meant for ironing and it keeps it from fusing to your ironing board or to your iron. I have a set of 3. If you really would like a set, they're not very expensive at all. I have them linked in my Amazon shop down in the description. They're great. And I just roll them up and keep them right down here. Now this is a polyester, so you don't want to go too hot, but you need it to be hot enough to stick. So I always give a little test on the outer edge, see if it's sticking. And you don't want to, when fusing, you don't want to iron like this. You want to press down, pick up, press down, pick up, because you're working with a little glue that's heat activated. If you push it around, you're actually going to kind of mess up the glue. It's not going to stick as well. And in order to get a good adhesion, you want to let it cool before you mess with it. So you want to press it, let it cool, and then you're ready to go. I've set up my overlock with it's a peach colored thread, but you can see how it sort of blends away on the colors. And I think it'll be the least conspicuous option. So that's what I'm going to serge in, but I'm going to sew. Any top stitching is going to be in this Pepto-Bismol pink. I was trying to decide between that and this ultra dark navy, which is, it looks black, but it's actually a blue. I could also do the peach, but these are the predominant colors, and I think I'm going to go with the pink. Let's talk pleats. I have taken my pattern piece and marked on the wrong side my little markings, and then I put pins matching everything up so you can see sort of like I've basted it with pins. My pins going through to my 2 little markings on each side so that when I put to the right side, so you can see how it automatically starts to just lay right. You can see this line here, how it all just lines up perfectly right there. The pleats actually go towards the front, which is counterintuitive in my brain, but that's just how it is. So now we can baste across this line. I'm actually going to baste up on here too. I can take that out later, but just baste it down. I'm going to do that for both fronts so that they will be like that, and then those will be ready to go. For the ties, I just serged them together. Then you just fold them in half and serge, super easy. And I've got my interfacing on all of my pieces, so I can do this in a minute. So we're going to go ahead and get these basted in and ready to go. And we've got all the big prep work done. Those pleats look pretty. You can kind of see how that's going to look. It definitely gives me the 70s classic vibe of the Diane von Furstenberg style. Now that I have all the prep work done, just slide it over a little bit. There we go. Okay. I have got my pleats in the fronts done. I have my interfacing all put together, and I have my ties put together. I'm going to find my back bodice here. Back bodice. So here's my back bodice. Do make sure you transfer markings. On the back bodice, it says for right side only. It has 2 markings. That's where we're going to leave it open so that we can get our tie through to make the wrap. I'm going to transfer those markings. And make sure you use the circles for your size. The size circle and mark at that spot. It's at the seam allowance. This has 5/8 inch seam allowance unless otherwise specified, and there's quite a few places where it is specified it's 3/8 instead. For instance, the ties, the facings, of course the hems are deeper, so check those seam allowance every single time you go to sew. Okay, now that I've marked that, we're going to go ahead and put this together at the shoulder seams. If you have a very stretchy fabric, if you're making this in a sweater knit or anything where you feel like your neckline is going to misshapen while you're moving it around, stay stitch that neckline, which they do show on step 2 or step 3. They show stay stitching the neckline and the back shoulder actually. Often the back shoulder seam is a little larger than the front shoulder seam. There's some ease built into it. So you may find that you are better off putting those basting lines in and using that to help move in your ease. I'm not going to. I'm going to skip it. It's a little faster, and I know I can get that eased in without it. This is going to be 5/8 inch seam allowance. This fabric does not fray at all. Like, I don't have to serge it. I just prefer to serge because I like a nice finished edge, a nice finished seam. I probably will press these open, so I think I will. I'm going to go ahead and overlock these shoulder seams before I straight stitch it together, and then they're done, they're finished, and I can press it open and not worry about it. So I'm going to do that real quick. I'm not taking anything off when I am serging. I'm just going right along that edge. All right, now we're going to sew. I was basting, so I want to make sure I put my stitch back to normal stitch length, which is usually between a 2.5 and a 3, depending on the settings of your sewing machine. Okay, let's give it a haircut, and we will be ready to move on to our neckband and facings that we've already interfaced. So we're going to take the 3 pieces that are interfaced and sew them together at the shoulder seam, and we're going to take the 3 pieces that are not interfaced and sew them together at the shoulder seam. The one that is interfaced will be on the inside of the garment. The one that is not interfaced will be the one that shows on the outside. I'm not going to worry about serging the little shoulder seam for these, and that's because it's going to be completely self-enclosed. If you look at this, there's an angle at the bottom. That is down at the waistline. So we're going to sew these together, right sides together at the shoulder. Yep. This, I believe, is also 5/8 of an inch. I know that when we sew it to the front, it's 3/8. That's what we're going to go with. So there's that one. Now we're going to do the one that does not have the interfacing. All right, we're ready to press them all open and give it another haircut. And we're on to step 5, which is pinning the band that is not interfaced onto the front. So let me give these a quick press and then we'll do that. Here is my garment and here is my facing. We're going to put them right sides together, and we're sewing the outer edge of the neckband to the outer edge of the bodice. So we're going to line up our little shoulder seam area. I'm hoping, I walked downstairs, went to the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and I had a black smudge on my nose. And I'm wondering how much of the video did I have a black smudge? And then we're going to press our seam allowance in towards the neckband facing area. So I'm going to hold this up so you can just see how you can see it's pinned around. And we're just now going to stitch around 3/8 of an inch. I know it's 3/8 because I looked at the pattern piece and it said 3/8. You can sew it with the facing or the neckband piece up, or you can sew it with the shirt up. I don't think there's that much ease difference. Most of the ease is going to be on the facing or neckband side, so I think I'm going to sew that side down, and I'm going to engage my even feed foot too, just because I'm working with knit. You don't want to stretch this seam. You just want to let it go through nice and smooth and even, which is one of the nice things if you have an even feed or maybe a walking foot, will help not accidentally stretch your fabric where you don't mean to. Okay, now that we've done that, step 6 is making our ties, which we've done. So next we're going to be putting the ties on, and I have transferred those markings off of our neckband piece so we know exactly where our tie is going to get basted on. It gets basted or pinned on the right side, so we're going to do that. Okay, we have done everything up to right here. I am pinning on my ties, I guess you would say. Here are my little lines, my little notches, so I know where to line up. So I've got them lined up on both sides, ready to go. And then they have you make the collar if you're doing the collar, which I am not. So next is we're going to get our other facing together and we're going to apply it. So when we do that, the extra facing, the one that has the interfacing on it, will cover this raw edge, turn to the inside, and we're actually going to cover this raw edge here also. So it's going to take care of all of that. So I'm all the way down to step 12. I'm getting ready to press up that edge, and then I'm going to sew it around this outer edge. Sometimes I don't press my edge first. Sometimes I wait and adjust it accordingly. I'm looking to see what this little thing here is. Turn facing, stitch in the, oh, okay. Stitching in the ditch. We are good at that. We know how to do that. And then that's going to completely enclose that entire front neck, and we'll be ready to move on to side seams. Okay, I've decided to put a pocket on the right side before we go any farther. Pulled out this navy. It's a slight stretch satin. It's scrap from something else, and I'm going to cut just 2 pocket pieces. I'm only going to put it on the right side, so I'm going to cut out this pocket. I'm going to face this part with some scrap of the dress so that if you see the side, you're not going to see the navy, you're going to see dress fabric, but the rest will be this satin. I'm doing the satin for 2 reasons. It's woven, it won't stretch, the pocket won't stretch out. I have a nice straight line so I can put it in the waistline of that side, so it also will keep it from pulling and stretching and sagging, and it will make, because it's satin, it will also disappear more behind. Now my biggest concern is that it shadows through, but I checked, it does not shadow through at all, so we're going with it. Okay, I'm stitching on the interfaced side of the neckband, or the facing side. You can see this is how it's looking. So I'm going around. Pretty straightforward. It is more stable on the interfaced side than the side that isn't, so put the interfacing on top and let your feed dogs do the work between the 2 layers, since there is a stabilization difference between the 2. I am pressing this edge between the 2 different neck lines. So this is the wrong side of my garment, and I'm now coming along this outer edge, and I'm pressing in that and putting pins in it so that I can do what they call stitch in the ditch, which is where you come along this seam line right here and you stitch in that seam line, but you have to have this edge pressed just beyond that seam line so you catch both edges. If you're worried about accuracy and getting that done right, you can come along and whip stitch by hand this edge into this stitching line and make it completely invisible. That's the other option. If you don't want to top stitch on your machine and do the stitch in the ditch, whip stitch by hand along this on the inside, and you're going all the way around the back of the neck and down both fronts. And here you can see the ties pulling out. And on the right side, here's the right side, it's completely enclosed. Because of the fabric I chose, it just looks like part of the design. You hardly even notice this little neckline piece. Pardon the loud plane going over. All right, I am all pinned on the wrong side. I'm going to flip this over. You can see I have the pin heads towards the shirt, and then the little, so that when I'm stitching, if I have to sew over a pin and not pull it out, the pin head is way away from where my needle and my foot will be, so I don't have to worry about it. I've pinned all the way around the entire thing, so you can see how it completely encloses it. From the outside, you can't see it at all. Now for stitching in the ditch, this is the seam that we want to stitch in. You could top stitch, which would be come into the neckline piece and stitch right next to this seam, and you could do it on both sides if you wanted to have top stitching. I am going to do my best to stitch in the ditch and catch this on the back side and miss all of those pins, and wish me luck. You can see how I'm kind of pulling apart that seam. I can also feel below it, so I'm hoping I'm hitting everything. All right, let's look and see how it's going. Sink my needle. And I should have sewn it a little bit more. So you cannot see the stitching at all. It completely disappears in there. And on the back side, it is, there we go. On the back side, can you see it is catching it? Okay, I'm going to stitch it around and I'll show you when I'm done. Got the facing on. I'm just going to hold it up inside out for you so you can see. So there's the facing on the inside. And on the outside, this is a very spongy knit, and it just absorbs those stitches when you stitch in the ditch. It's lovely. I've got my ties on, and I went ahead to the serger and I just serged my side seams independently. I need to be able to press open, especially the right side. I don't want to serge it together because I need to have a little hole on the right side that will be the channel for the tie to come through. So on the left side, I can just sew it shut. 5/8 of an inch, and then I'm double checking because there's so many 3/8. On the right side there are little markings for a hole, and that hole is where we're going to put the tie through. So I'm going to actually put pins where the little marking is. It seems narrow, so there's my little pins, and it's a little smaller than my actual tie. The tie is going to crinkle a little to go through, which is good. If it's too wide, it'll actually gap and it'll show your skin. You can see your side. We don't want that. We want it to be pretty invisible, so we want it to be small. So I'm just going to sew up the right side, and between the two circles is going to be a hole. I'm going to back stitch at this little circle and sew down. So I have like a 5/8 inch seam here, and then skip the hole. It's about 1.25 inches, something like that. And then I'm going to sew from that circle, back stitch all the way up to the underarm on the right side. The left side, we're just going to sew it shut. Okay, there's my teeny tiny stitch. Okay, there's one side seam, and it can be pressed open. And now I'm going to go ahead and do the other one. All right, we have a side seam. It's ready to press open. So I'm going to set that over here. And let's move on to sleeve. Sleeve is step 16. Sleeve's always on the bottom. Okay, so here's my sleeve. I did mark my my notches, so I know my front from my back and my shoulder. I'm looking to see there's one notch on the bottom that helps us line up our cuffs. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that too. And then on the cuff, I'm going to do the same thing. Mark that notch. And there are circles. The circles are for helping us know where to sew to make. The cuff kind of looks like it has a little notch in it. So we're going to start with, it recommends putting some basting stitches in the cap for ease, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. I often don't need it, especially in a knit, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. I will serge in my sleeve when I'm done. Let's set this to a basting line. It doesn't say seam allowed, so you want to do that at like at the 5/8 and then at the 3/8, something like that, so that you can use it for ease and then you can pull it out later. Now you could serge this together, or you can do as we've done for the rest of it and serge it independently and just straight stitch it. Both will work. And what do I want to do? Underarm together, double stitch seam, press towards seam back, and they trim it off. So I think I'm just going to serge my sleeve together. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just serge together my sleeves. By doing that, I'm losing some of my seam allowance. So there's one sleeve. All right, let's look at this cuff. The picture and what it says to me do not match up. Let's look at this. Okay, so they show this. Now, if you look at the sleeve, they show this and they show the two little circles with little seams coming out of it. So what it looks like we need to do is this. There's a large circle here, and we're going to stitch this way on each side because this comes around like that and is open. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna make sure I have my circles marked. So we are stitching, the circle is 5/8 inch down from the edge. So we're gonna start at that 5/8 inch line and stitch shut. The picture in 17 is confusing to me. I'm just telling you. I think what they're showing, instead of like marking with a pencil, they're showing marking with a tailor tack. But the way they have it, it looks like it's folded in half. It just is confusing to me. Hopefully it isn't for you. So we're going to start 5/8 of an inch down. Okay, so this picture to me is confusing. This looks like they're somehow tacking through both, in which they may be doing the tailor tack to mark it, which you often do. Anyway, it's easier just to mark it with a pencil or a pen instead of doing the tailor tack, in my humble opinion. Then we're going to fold it long ways like this. We're going to start 5/8 inch from, my camera would crack, okay, 5/8 inch from that edge. So I'm going to come up here and 5/8 inch. So we're going to start right there. So we're not starting at the cut edge. We're coming down a little bit. We're going to sew our 5/8 on all ends on both cuffs, flip it around. It's going to kind of look like this. Then we're going to baste it together to sew on the edge of our sleeve. Make sure we were just basting, put it back to regular stitch length. All right, so we've stitched our two ends, so we should be able to flip it around like this. And then they show us matching it up right on that edge so that it'll go on the bottom of our sleeve. Okay, so 18 to me sounds a little confusing. You can see where they've matched up their little circles on the wrong side before they flipped it around. Let me show you how I'm going to do it. So here's my cuff sewn on the wrong side, and I'm going to press it like this. So can you see it's not stitched here. I'm going to lay those two on top of each other with that open. Oop, just like that. So see, they're on top of each other. Wait a minute, if I stitch those together and flip this around, yeah, that should work. Am I fooling myself? Okay, so we stopped stitching here. I'm going to match up those two sides and stitch above it, making it a circle. And then when I flip it around, hold on, I'm going to do it real quick and see. Okay, so I've pinned where I would like to stitch, and then I'm just going to flip it around to see if it works, because I'm trying to make this, yes it does. So what that does is it makes it a circle for us. See that? So you can stitch those, you could even hand baste it if you want to, but see, now it's a perfect circle and it's going to easily go on. You could do it without even sewing this. I'm just going to tell you, this is not super anything I'd be super anxious about. We could even just, like how I have it pinned together, you could just baste across here just to make it stay together before we attach it, which is what I'm going to do. So now that they're pinned together, we're going to come to the sewing machine, make sure everything's lined up on top of itself. I'm just going to put a little basting line to make these all stay together right along the 5/8 inch. Try not to hit any of those pins. And you can baste farther. We want to keep those cut edges on top of each other. Lengthen my stitch again. And if you want to, you can baste all the way around, but I'm just worried about that little segment right there. And now I have a circle. Now I have a circle and it's ready to go onto the sleeve. Okay, so that's ready to be pressed. And then I can sew that to the bottom of my sleeve. So here's my sleeve. We're going to just put right sides together, and the The opening, this little opening is on the outside, which is why there's a notch. So when we find the notch on the cuff, we find the notch on our sleeve, and that will ensure that we get that little opening, that little slit in the right spot. Matching up that little opening, I'm going to tuck this down inside the sleeve. There we go. Make sure you get the right notch on the right sleeve, because if you do it wrong, your little opening ends up on the seam line. If you do it correctly, it ends up on top. So check to make sure you get it in the right spot. Yay. You can't just put any old sleeve any old where. All right, so we're just going to pin this in and just sew around that circle at 5/8 of an inch, and our cuffs will be in. So I'm going to go ahead and do both cuffs real quick. All right, so here's the cuff all pinned in. You can see the little slit, and it's on the top of the sleeve. Here's my seam allowance underneath. So I'm going to just slide this whole thing into the machine here and sew around the circle at 5/8 of an inch. And then I'm going to go back and serge this edge when I'm done. Gotta watch all these little, I should have given it a better haircut. Oh no, guys, I'm stitching this with a basting stitch. I'm gonna shorten my stitch and go all the way around one more time. Just noticed. Don't forget to switch back to your regular stitch length. All right, one more again. All these threads are going to be a problem. That's not going anywhere. That's in there for life. Now I'm going to go over here and just serge around that same edge, and we're good. Okay, just serged around it. I'm going to just push it through so you can see. It needs a haircut, but you can see the sleeve, and it also needs pressed, and you can see the little cuff. Now I'm going to make sure that seam allowance stays pressed up into the sleeve, and I'm going to just stitch around it to hold it in place. So I'm going to get the other sleeve done first, and I'm going to press it first. Then we'll be ready to set our sleeves into our bodice and move on to skirt. Yay! Okay, I'll be back when I get the other sleeve done, and I'll show you how I set them in. So here is our lovely sleeve. You can see the little slit in the cuff there, and I have edge stitched it. To edge stitch, I'm using my 1/4 inch foot, and I'm lining up the seam edge where the cuff meets the sleeve with the inside of the toe. It gives me an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, or an 1/8 of an inch top stitch. So I'm just going to stitch it around, making sure that I don't accidentally sew through the sleeve. You can take, you can use your free arm if you want to. I didn't pull mine up, but this sleeve would fit over the free arm very easily. It would make it easier for you to sew. The seam allowance is pressed up into the sleeve. way around. I always start in the back at the seam. That way it hides where you start and you stop, and you don't really see the stitching. There it is. Well, if my thing would track. There we go. There you can see it. All right, I'm pinning in my finished sleeve, and I am using those basting lines. Sometimes you need them, sometimes you don't. And that there's just enough ease in there that I think you will find that you need to use those ease lines. So it pins in beautifully. I'm ready to just stitch it in. I'm going to sew it on the sewing machine first and then go back and serge it. I will serge off some of the seam allowance because you don't want that 5/8 inch seam allowance sticking up into your armpit. It's just more comfortable if it's a little narrower seam allowance in that part of the body. So I'm going to get both sleeves put in and we'll be ready to move on to skirt. So I have the bodice completely together. You can see I need to trim a few little hairs here and there, but I have the sleeves in. They're serged. You can see the pretty front neckline with the little ties all ready to go, and I have the little side opening. So the next thing is the skirt. Now, if you're not putting in a pocket, you're going to go ahead and do your front to back on the side seams, and you're going to hem the front edge. I think it only gives us, let's look. Okay, so for step 24, we are going to finish the front edge of our front skirts, and it just says finish. So, and I did not find how much it said to turn back. So I turned back 3/8 of an inch and top stitched it because we are going to fold back. There's a fold line we're going to fold back. So you can see how that makes it look nice and finished. So I've just done 3/8 of an inch all the way down. My fabric does not fray, so I didn't serge it or anything else. I just have that pretty top stitching. So I'm going to do that on both sides. Then we can do our side seams to each other. Now for me on the left, I'm just going to do front to back on the side seam, but on the right, I'm putting a pocket in. So when I get there, I'll show you. So on the right side of the skirt, I have serged my seam allowance for the side seam, and I have my two pocket pieces. You can see I've faced the inside of it. So if it peaks, it's not going to be noticeable. And I'm going to just line them up on the side seam. And I want to get up close because I actually am going to catch the top of this pocket in this seam so it's supported. So I want it in that waistline seam. I'm going to sew down 5/8 of an inch to about here, so that I have room to sew around that bottom edge. I've gone ahead and serged this much together. I'm going to straight stitch this on the sewing machine, and then I'll come back and serge the pocket together out here, and then I'll probably do a little straight stitching on the machine. I'll show you all the little close-ups of it, but I'm going to put both pocket pieces on. I've got the rest of the skirt together. The left side is together because it's just a plain old seam, and the left side front is hemmed, and I have a little pin so I know where to fold back for the front to line it up. So we're getting ready to put our skirt on after I get these pockets in. I have got the pocket on the right side only sewn to the front and the back at the top of the side seam. You can see where it's ended, and then I'm going to just pull that up so that I can start stitching right below where I stopped, and I can just stitch down the whole side seam, and then that's done. Then I'm going to come back here to the pocket, and I'm going to serge the rest of the pocket together, and I'm going to come in with the sewing machine and just finish off this little area so I don't have a little hole right there. But I'm going to get this put together. It should just take me a couple minutes, and then we'll be ready to put the skirt. Let me make sure. We're going to put the skirt to the bodice and then hem the skirt. All right, so here is the pocket serged around. You can see where I've come in and used my machine just to even that out and make it nice and sturdy. I've got my side seams that I can press open. This is the front of the skirt. I have lined up my side seam here where the pocket is with the side seam in the back, and I'm going to just stitch down, I don't know, about an inch. I'm just to to give a side seam at the top where the where this gets sewn to the bodice, and that's going to make this line up nice and not pull apart. So I'm just going to top stitch right down here, and that is on the side seam. You can see the side seam back here. So I'm going to just top stitch about 1 inch. 5/8 of that's going to get caught in the seam allowance, and then that's going to be the top of my pocket. It'll just make everything lay nicer. Right, we're pinning or clipping the skirt to the bodice all the way around. This is the little fold front facing, is not getting folded back yet. You can see my little pin that's lined up perfectly with the center front. This little notch kind of comes past the center, really lines up with our with where our tie comes out, our fold line. Sorry, center front's over here. This is the fold line. So after we sew across here, we're going to actually, you can see it right here, we're going to take this little folded facing part, and it's going to fold back across, and we're going to stitch it down. And then when we flip it around, that encloses this whole little area at the front of the waist, which makes it nice and even. But we may have to trim off a little bit of this little point to make it knit lay nice. So I am going to first just sew this edge, just going to sew across. I may put some elastic, especially in the back, because it gives it a little stability and it just makes the waist more stable. So I may put a little elastic in. That's not part of the pattern. They don't recommend it. It's just something I'm considering doing. So they're just double stitching it. They're double stitching it to make it strong. So anyway, I'm going to put it in, and then I'm going to just see how heavy it is and if I need to do more before I finish the little front facing part here and put in the hem. Okay, it's getting late and dark. It is 5:15, so I'm going to go ahead and get this waistband. I'm going to get it done, but I'm going to wait and take my final shots tomorrow when I have good fresh light in the morning. So I have, okay, the waistband is on, or the waist is on. So I've married the bodice to the skirt, made sure everything is lined up, and then I trimmed off, let me come to this side where you can see it. I trimmed off the nose of that point so that when I fold this across, it'll fold nice and neat. After that, all that's left is the hem, and I'll just show you the hem down here. And you want to make sure when you hem it that the bottom hem goes underneath that front fold back. That's always going to look nicer. And I'm actually going to fold it and stitch it there so I have like a perfect little corner and then hem it. So I'll show you that when I get to it. And I might top stitch it on this square one, or on the straight skirt they show it blind stitched. And they do on this one too. So I haven't decided yet. I have 1.25 inches worth of hem that I can work with. All right, so here's the waist after I've sewn that across. I'm going to come back and serge all of this. I'm going to actually serge it down so it's not so thick. So I'm going to do that on both sides. And then down here at the bottom of the hem, I'm going to fold this back the amount that is at the top, so it's folded back the same, and I'm going to stitch across here how deep I want my hem to be, and then this little corner will have a perfect little edge. I'm going to do that on both sides, and it's just going to give me a nicer hem. So I decided to go ahead and do the 1.25 inches, and for the hem, I'm going to hand stitch this hem, I think. So what I'm doing is on the 3/8 inch line, I'm going to run a basting line all the way around. That's going to help me pull in. It's also going to help it fold. So I'm going to fold under on that line and use it to pull in to shape to, because it's such a shaped skirt, to shape so that you can see here, right now this edge is wider than what I'm turning it up to. So that's going to help me give it better shape. So that's what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to just sit and hand stitch tonight so that I'll have a pretty dress tomorrow. I did slip it on, and I think the size is going to be fine. I am going to definitely have to pin it in the center front. Can you tell how dark it is? I haven't had this camera on for a while and the sun has set. I am just finishing up my hem now, and then I will call it a night, and I will see you in the morning with it finished. I'm just going to be doing the hand whip stitching. I may show you a few close-ups of me working on that hem. This is a longer project. Warning, warning. It just is. I had been working since 9 a.m. this morning, and I had sort of pre-prepped my pattern. It's just a lot of little fiddly details, and I did choose to eat lunch and things in there too. So normally it's still a one day for me, but it is a very long one day. Okay, so I have my first basting line on the 3/8 inch, and then I'm coming back and doing the second one where I want my final fold, where this hem is actually going to be. So that's on the 1¼ inch, and these will get pulled out. But this is just going to make it lots easier for me when I'm working, because I will have a stitching line to work from. See how easy that makes that? It's just going to make it easier when I'm sitting there, whip stitching around this very wide skirt by hand. And you can see it says 5/8 there. 5/8 and 5/8 is 1¼ inch. So convenient. Hemming check-in. So I am just folding on my 2 basting lines that I made. You can see how nicely that's folding. And I'm going to give it a press. I'm just going to pin and press, pin and press. Yep, it's completely dark out. But look at my hem. I decided to go ahead and hand pick the hem. So this is the right side. You can't see it at all. You can see my basting line here that I will pull out when I'm done. And this is the inside. Now it needs a good pressing. But you can see the hemline, and it really is nice and invisible. And I think that's going to hang very nice too. And once everything's pressed, it's going to be lovely. So I'm going to sit here. It's getting chilly up here. I'm going to have to turn on a space heater, I think, and just keep on stitching. It doesn't take that long to hand pick a hem, even when it's a full circle like this, or not a true circle, but a full skirt. Okay. Let's style this. I've brought up a couple pair of shoes and a couple bags to go with this outfit. I have not yet put the little, I think I'm going to do a hook and eye or a snap up here. I've just got a straight pin holding it together because it does. If you're fine with cleavage, you're going to have plenty. But for me, it's just, I didn't feel comfortable. And I'll show you my first look that I'm considering. They look pretty timeless. This is such, I love the dress. It's super comfy and easy to wear. I am considering, and I have not done it, I may tack this front facing a little bit, but it's laying quite nice. So I think I'll let it be. Okay. Look number 1. So I also have this very bright pink purse. I also have a softer pink. I wasn't sure which. Don't love it. Let me show you the black. Both look good with it. Both are sort of timeless. Now I did put a pocket in right here, which I think just disappears. You can't see it shadowing through or anything. I did do a satin, so it's soft. And I just have it on the right side. I left the left side alone. This would look so good with a knee-high boot, which was also so 1970s. I would like to do it again, and maybe in a little bit less busy fabric, so you could see the pretty detailing, because you can't really see all the details. The fabric sort of eats up the details, but it sure fits nice. I like this fabric. It's a heavier weight, spongy, creped knit, and it hangs really well. You can see it just has nice drape. Now, if you're concerned about wardrobe malfunctions, it would be very easy to put a few little hidden snaps in the skirt to make sure your skirt doesn't blow open, and also up here in the bodice to make sure you stay covered for modesty as much as you prefer. Otherwise, what an easy wear dress. I can see why they were all the rage in the 70s. If you are long-waisted, which I am, and I did not do any waist alterations at all, my natural waist is here. So you can see this is a couple inches above my natural waist. If you're long-waisted and busty, this could end up being almost empire on you. So you need to, kind of consider how you want that to lay, and if it's going to be right for you. The length, I think, is so flattering. It is right at the knee. This was a time-consuming project. I started at 9 a.m. in the morning yesterday, and I stitched till 7:30, took a break, got up this morning, finished the hem, and it is Monday at 11. And I'm just now getting these pictures done. I'm going to run downstairs. I normally take a day and a half to edit. I'm going to be busting it to get this thing edited and to you on Wednesday morning, but I'm going to get it and you will see. I hope you enjoyed it. I would love to know, which shoe and purse did you like? One could be day, one could be night, I guess technically. Well, thanks for sewing with me. I'm interested in knowing what you think about this project. Have you made it before? Have you worn something like this before? Were you around in the 70s when these were popular? I'm curious. Did you even know about Diane von Furstenberg? Have you seen the documentary? I want to see it, but haven't gotten to yet. I've got to get a Hulu subscription, I guess, so I can, at least a temporary one, so I can watch the documentary. Thanks for sewing with me. I'll see you next week for another fun video.